Hi everyone, thanks for joining me once again. This is Peter, you're watching Thailand Bound, and today is a Saturday, which means only one thing, it's story time. I've got 4 viewers' stories to read out to you today, 4 true stories, and as always, they're pretty good. Right, before we get into the stories, I've got something to read to you. It's a comment that was sent to me by a friend that was left on my channel that I missed. So I'm not whining, I'm not complaining, I just want to read this out because I just think it's funny. Do you remember the guy about 2 weeks ago, I think I mentioned last week, he was complaining about my glasses. You see there's one side's gone and they're slightly tilted, and he said it puts him off when he's watching the stories, and we'd put that to bed, and that was the end of it. Now I received this from a friend of mine. He wrote, before I read the comment out, he actually says, oh my God, these people are nuts. Now obviously not you guys, he's talking about 1 or 2 oddballs out there who find reasons to complain about nothing, basically. So this guy's right. I won't even tell you his name because it might be embarrassing if he watches this, and he might not have meant anything devious by it. So let me just read it out and then you can make up your own mind. 12 hours ago this was left on my channel. It says, hey Peter, interesting video, but your shirt is very distracting. Can you please tone down your color choices? As I said, they're regrettably off-putting. Thanks in advance. Well, just for you, sir, I'm now wearing a black t-shirt, so hopefully you will enjoy today's upload. All right, all joking aside, let's get on with it. Okay, now the first story is actually based in Shanghai in China. As I've said to you many times, if you've got a story, it doesn't necessarily have to come from Thailand, as long as it goes along the same sort of themes, you know, guy meets girl, guy gets busted out, loses everything, that sort of thing, or maybe he's successful. And I am starting to run slightly short of stories again, so if you're sitting on a story, please send it in. I'll change names as always. All right, here's the first story.
สวัสดีค่ะ
The night started boring enough. I thought I would go out for a walk, have an agreeable meal, and maybe find a massage with extra services. When I left my hotel, I headed off in a different direction from the usual way I normally go, as the normal way is generally packed with people, and I was quite familiar with what was available there. Feeling like something different, I headed out. Not wanting any issues with the police, I had a photocopy of my passport ID page and about £295 or so in cash with me, but no cards. As I was walking there was a lot of ground floor girls of various quality peeking their heads out and calling me. None of it seemed interesting, so I kept going and found myself on a huge boulevard which looked more promising. One girl in normal clothes, looked decent, and who spoke okay English kept following me. I could not shake her as I was not interested. Then she follows me into a hotel, a Marriott, where I contemplated going to the sports bar to have a meal. But changing my mind because that would leave me with very little cash left for the night. So I left and finally wandered into the local McDonald's. The girl who had followed me sat next to me while I had my meal, but without really saying a word. I decided I could not shake her and I was getting annoyed. I decided to go back to my hotel. I saw a cab and I jumped in it. I tried to wave her off, but she ran round and got in the other side. We were arguing with the driver on where to go and she won. She said that she would take me to a nice place and promised I would have good fun. Fine, whatever. On the way there, she kept trying to assure me that it would be well worth my while and there is no problem and I should just relax. She was getting flirty, so I thought maybe it would be with her and it wouldn't be so bad, especially if it was with this girl. We drove forever. It had to be at least 30 minutes, and in the middle of a residential area, I see a giant spa with a fountain and a driveway. The girl handed me over to some nice old lady and I was disappointed. She took me inside and downstairs to another room. Shortly afterwards, I was seated. She brought me in 10 girls who stood there and I was able to pick one out. I picked the first one as she was cute. She gave a pathetic hand job and then left saying she'll be back for more. I was left in the room for a number of minutes by myself. Looking around, there was some water on the table with a lovely fruit tray and some other things and a very faded price list for the various items of beverages and nibbles, including the fruit tray. The prices for this rubbish were not cheap and totaled £2,250. Perhaps that included the room as well, I'm not sure. I thought, thank goodness I'm not ordering any of that. 2 guys entered the room. One was quite well built with spiky hair and the other was a thinner, taller guy who spoke excellent English. He was in a high gloss leather jacket and he handed me a bill for £2,250. I said, "What was this for?" He said that this was the bill for everything I had received and once I paid it, I could carry on. I said I didn't order any of it and I don't want to pay for it and I can't pay even if I wanted to. I learned that this guy was half Japanese and he said to me that we're both foreigners here and I should just go along with it and not make trouble. As the conversation got more tense, the muscly guy looked more and more uncomfortable. A little more about me. At the time I had a bulky build but not muscle, but under baggy clothes and dark lighting I could have looked less fat than I was. A childhood illness had wiped out a lot of my muscles before doctors determined what was happening, but by then I had lost about 50% of my muscle mass, which I could never regain. The medicine required to keep my body in check made me swell up a bit, especially in my face. Given that there is no way I could survive a physical confrontation, I had no choice but to try and play it cool. The Japanese guy kept saying, "Stop being aggressive." It seemed like he was setting an excuse for other things to happen later. I finally said, "Look, we've been discussing this for almost an hour and we're not getting anywhere. I'm not being aggressive, nor am I being angry. I was brought here by a stranger. I didn't know what was in store and I think this awful place is trying to rip me off. I cannot pay you £2,250 and even if I could, I don't think it's fair because none of this was explained clearly." I said, "I can pay you £980, but I'll have to go back to my hotel first to get my card from the safe and then go to the bank and get the cash out." They both went away to discuss this and came back. They agreed to my terms. Thank goodness I'm not going to be beaten or die tonight, I thought. They said that the muscly guy would come with me. I said, "Okay, fair enough." I went to the restroom with the muscly guy waiting inside with me. There was no escape path in the restroom, and even if there was, I had no idea where in the city I was. By then, an old, very unattractive girl had joined us. She was annoying as hell and she spoke no English but loved the sound of her own voice. Walking out of the spa past the reception on the basement floor, I saw another Westerner handing over a credit card saying, "Okay, try this one." I felt really bad for him. As we reached the ground level by the stairs and outside, I saw the girl tout that brought me there chatting with the guy at the podium. She saw me but was pretending she hadn't seen me. By then I hated her guts and my eyes probably did nothing to hide this fact. I got into the front passenger seat of a regular taxi. My hotel was relatively new. They didn't know where it was, so I told them the name of a hotel fairly close by, which they did know. A long cab ride with the old woman just trying to talk to me. I don't even know why she came along and I wasn't in the mood. I didn't know if she was to be offered to me as a consolation prize or not once I had paid. I have no idea why she was there, but I certainly wasn't going to do anything with her. We stopped at a Family Mart convenience store, but not near my hotel or the one I said to go to. I was terrified again, and there were 5 or 6 bodybuilder types standing around on the sidewalk in front of the shop. I literally thought to myself, is this how it will end? The old lady went into the Family Mart and just as quickly the bodybuilders disappeared. The lady was taken forever, so I got out the cab to see what was going on. I could not see her in the shop, then the muscle guy in the cab perked up but still didn't really say anything. A cab going the other direction stopped at a red light, so I walked across the street and got in. Then muscly guy gets out of the original cab and was yelling at the Family Mart. She came running out and it was a waiting game now. As the cab I was in was waiting for the light to change, it did right before they both got back into their cab. My new cab driver still didn't know my original hotel, but I could see a landmark, so I was able to direct him, but the other cab had caught us up. I asked him to go faster, but he didn't want to or didn't understand. Anyways, we ended up losing the first cab by chance and I couldn't believe it. Maybe they diverted to the original hotel that they knew the address. I'm not sure, but I knew the people back at the spa would probably get wind of this and they knew the name of my actual hotel and what I looked like. Here is where I didn't know what to do. As I was safely back in my room, it was only around 10:30 or 11 p.m. But I thought these people seemed like they play for keeps. I was leaving the next day on a 1 o'clock flight, so there was a window where I could be caught by these people or they could bribe the hotel with a picture of me from the spa that they more than likely had from their CCTV cameras. I thought, I really don't want to risk it. I left my hotel with my card and went to an ATM and got the £980 out as insurance in case they ever did catch up with me. In the morning when I was ready to leave, I thought this moment is do or die. There were more cabs than normal and one of the cab drivers was yelling at me. Part of me could not figure out if it was because he recognised me and was working for the spa or he was simply wanting my business. I left my bag with the concierge and met my co-workers for a coffee across the street. No way was I going to tell them about my adventures from the previous night. Finally, in a taxi on the way to the airport and everything seemed normal and I was able to now relax. The moral for this story is, just trust your gut. I had no interest in going with this girl in the beginning and I should have been way more aggressive, even rude if I needed to be. 2. Never go with touts. You have no idea who they are touting for. If you want something bad enough, find it on your own. I know I was very lucky. I didn't lose my cool despite being accused of it constantly by the Japanese guy. I remained polite in the face of what was a total farce. I was lucky. I was only out the 2 cab fares, but then I also never paid for anything else that took place in the spa. I managed to hang on to the £980 and that went home with me. A funny thing happened after this at the airport. My flight was delayed for a few hours, so I went to a restaurant in the check-in area. There I saw a Western guy in a pilot shirt drinking some beers. I thought, interesting. He must have just landed and has a longer than anticipated flight for his hotel transportation. Fast forward a few hours and I'm in a shop airside and I see him again in full pilot's uniform. Thank goodness I wasn't flying that airline that day, which I won't mention here. Bearing in mind that was many, many years ago, I don't think you'd see any pilots drinking alcohol these days. They'd get lynched, wouldn't they? One thing that always surprises me about some of these stories, and we get quite a few like this, is, you know, guys get led along, and I read these stories and I think, why don't you just say, no, I'm not going, put your foot down. You didn't, you know, when the girl gets in the cab, you just get out or get her out somehow. You don't sort of say, oh, okay, then I'll go along with you. And you see what happened in the story. I've just never understood why guys don't put the foot down. You know, there was a story a while back, I think last year, where a guy wanted to take another Western guy out of the city to meet his daughter with a view to marriage, and he wasn't interested, but he was kind of persuaded, and in the end he said, oh, all right, I'll go with you, and that all went sort of head over heels. And it never fails to amaze me that these guys just get dragged along with it. You know, just say no. You know, you don't have to go anywhere you don't want to, and you don't have to do anything you don't want to, unless it's an official person asking you, of course. All right, let's jump straight into story number 2. This is quite a good warning, bit of an old scam. It's called the gem scam. I think most people are aware of this now, but this is something that actually happened, and it will give you a good idea of what you shouldn't do, if that makes sense. My wife and I have been enjoying going to Thailand for short trips, as it is close to where we live and is usually cheap and easy, especially in pre-COVID times. Usually we stay in the city centre and get lots of Thai massages, great food, I get some tailoring and we relax by the pool. One time we had booked at a newer hotel, a Radisson, but it was quite a bit away from our normal area. This led to the first problem, taxis. I didn't know there was a second Radisson which was older than our hotel, and they all knew. The hotel gave us a simple map in Thai with instructions on where the hotel we were staying in was located. One evening after dinner, we got into a taxi and told him the name of our hotel. I tried to show him the paper and he waved it off, not even looking at it. Sure enough, he was heading to the wrong hotel. I kept trying to tell him that he was going to the wrong hotel. He just smiled and carried on. Of course, this was a cab where the meter was supposedly broken. In my limited experience of Thailand, it always seemed like about 99% of the cabs in Thailand have broken meters. Or so they say. A few times in the past, I've insisted they put the meter on, but they just won't do it. It's almost as if I'm trampling on the graves of their ancestors and insulting them because I want them to not cheat me and put that goddamn meter on for once. Finally, we get to the wrong Radisson and the doorman opens a taxi door for us, but the driver is yelling as we get out. The doorman says, "You need to pay him." I said, "I'm not paying him anything. He didn't put the meter on and he wouldn't listen to me. When we tried to tell him he's going the wrong way, he just kept driving." We explained more to the doorman as he spoke good English and realised that the driver had cheated us. He took over and he got into a heated argument with the driver. Eventually, the taxi driver gave in. He knew he didn't have a leg to stand on. It gave me so much satisfaction to see him drive off without a penny of my money. We found out that the doorman was half American, had spent a long time in California. He arranged for the Hotel Mercedes to take us to the correct hotel at no extra cost, and when we arrived in our room, there was a birthday cake waiting for me. Every time Thailand disappoints me, something happens that makes me smile. The next day I thought we should do something cultural and suggested we take a water taxi to the Grand Palace. This was a big mistake. I went to reception and got directions on how to catch a boat taxi to the Grand Palace. When we got there, a guy kept telling me that I had to pay for the boat before it arrived. I don't think he was even Thai, I think he was a Filipino. I kept trying to ignore him, but he was relentless, and finally an older Thai man who looked like he had lived 10 lifetimes told me to follow him as the water taxi arrived. He gestured that we should pay the lady on board the boat and how much to pay. He was so nice. We got off at the Grand Palace stop and made our way to the entrance. I was in shorts, so they wouldn't let me in. I asked what I could do. The guard at the entrance said I could buy trousers or a wrap from a local store and return, and we would be permitted into the temple. An Indian guy standing close by overheard the conversation with the guard and then started giving us the hard sell on being our local guide for the palace. In hindsight, that would have been better. We went off to find a stall, of which there were many. They all seemed to sell everything except trousers or wraps. Not only that, but the amount of people hassling us was becoming overwhelming. One guy who was quite aggressive was told to clear off by the tourist police. A saviour, not, he says. He tells us that as a temple which is open for tourists only for today, and I don't need pants to visit it. He can arrange a tuk-tuk to send us there, so we agreed because by now we had no interest in visiting the Grand Palace. I think most people by now know where this is going. We arrive at the temple and we are greeted by a guy named Arun. As nice as he was, he genuinely seemed shocked that someone showed up for a tour. It was actually an interesting tour. The temple was now serving some sort of a lunch, so he helped to get us some plates and we chatted at a table. During the chat, he told us that he'd lived in New York for a while, and he even showed us his New York driving license. Then he told us that he could send us to a gem shop, as the red stones from Thailand are very rare and we could buy lots of them and resell them back home. I said that this is not interesting to me. The admin work to buy and sell back in the US when I don't live there doesn't make sense. And it wasn't a task I wanted to put on my nearly retired parents, as my brother was fighting in Kabul at the time. He then suggested that I buy for myself, as they are rare and getting rarer. The value can only go up, he said. He sent us off with a wave in a cab and we arrived at the gem showroom. First we were ushered into a nice air-conditioned lounge and served cold drinks. We were then shown a 10-minute movie on how rare these red stones are, and with some impressive footage of heavy machinery working on the ground and everything coming to a standstill when red stones are discovered. Next we are led into a showroom which has a very pleasant, well-dressed staff and what looked like a large jewellery store. We wandered around the showroom and found a few things that we liked, but the prices were outrageous. Everything looked very cheap. The staff became less pleasant the more you seemed reluctant to buy any purchases. There was an Australian couple at a counter and this guy was doing it right. He had a calculator and he was working out his own discounts for the items that him and his wife were interested in. An American guy came in and made a big scene about not being interested, and he was quickly whisked away. There were a few nice stones that would have made nice ornaments, but because everything was so overpriced and expensive, we literally had no interest in buying anything. I had found a nice pair of elephant cufflinks with purple stones. They were still around $300 and they felt light. To be honest, they were rubbish. I liked another pair of cufflinks. They were made from red stones. They looked like a Japanese flag. They were pretty neat looking, but as light as paper clips. Those were $3,000. We decided that we had no intention of spending that much money, so we bought the elephant cufflinks instead. They asked us where we would go next, and we said we wanted a massage. They said that they could arrange for one for us, By then we had realised we were being scammed and said no. After much insisting, the lady backed off and arranged a van to take us back to our hotel. I never wore the cufflinks. The whole thing left an awful taste in my mouth, and it was the only time I felt like Thailand had let me down. I realise now, years later, it was me who let us down. We had let our guard down and trusted a guy we never knew and was hanging around a tourist area with so many touts that were absolutely relentless. We were put off Thailand for a while, but after trying Vietnam and Malaysia and even Bali, we are always drawn back to Thailand. We have children and now do things that children enjoy. Luckily, there isn't too much scamming around children's activities. So yeah, classic scam there. I don't think it happens too much these days because of the internet. There's a couple of things here. Yeah, I mean, if anybody solicits you to go on any kind of tour, that's a famous scam. You go to the Grand Palace and they say, you know, it's closed today because they're doing something inside. And, you know, I know a temple where it's only open for today and my friend's a tuk-tuk driver and it's all a scam. You'll go to a tailor's, a gem shop, you know, everything, you know, and the tuk-tuk driver gets a little cut everywhere he goes round. So, you know, unless you're organising something yourself, don't be drawn in by these kind of things. I think most guys who listen to these stories on a weekly basis have got their Thailand stripes now and they don't get caught by these sort of scams. There's newer scams around. We'll get into that one day. The other thing that comes up here, the other thing that comes up in this story, now a lot of people who come here, they do like to look at cultural venues such as temples. Now you've got to remember, a temple, it's a great day out to go and have a look at, but it is a spiritual place. It is a place of worship. So you've got to show a bit of respect. You can't go there in an old vest with Singer on the front of it, flip-flops and a short. You're being totally disrespectful to expect to be let into such a holy site, you know. So, you know, they're used to foreigners. They're not going to be rude and get all upset, but they won't let you in. So, you know, just be sensible about it. If you're going to visit the Grand Palace, put on a nice pair of trousers, a shirt, and you know, ladies, make sure your legs are covered to below the knees, and you'll have no problems. It's just showing respect. It's common sense, but unfortunately, some people sort of common sense goes over the top, doesn't it? All right, we've got two more stories. Let's get into story number 3. As I was getting ready to be married, I was back in my home country and was in a car accident with my brother. No one was hurt, but it was a pretty bad crash, and so I cancelled my stag party that evening. My wife was very fair, and because I missed out on my stag party, she agreed to let me go to Thailand with my friends who were all married at the time. We also had another couple of guys who came with us who weren't married, but they were both gay, but they weren't a couple. We had heard about the famous ping pong shows in Bangkok and decided we wanted to go and see one, as none of us had seen one before. This was years ago, so I can't remember the exact location, but I'm guessing it was probably one of the upstairs bars at Pat Pong. We were walking past lots of bars. There were a lot of people outside trying to get us into their bars. They were all wearing different uniforms, some dressed up as sexy waitresses and all sorts of other uniforms. One guy was holding up what looked like a menu with all different shows advertised. One of them said ping pong show, jackpot. We were led up some stairs to a room with a boxing ring set up in the middle of the room and some seating around the boxing ring. We ordered our drinks and then some ladies showed up and raised their glasses thanking us for their drinks. First sign of trouble, as we hadn't ordered any drinks for these ladies. At this point in the proceedings, we really didn't know what we had signed up for. I just remember thinking at the time that they have all had drinks, they're thanking us for them, but we didn't order any drinks. Anyway, let's see how this plays out. So the show begins. Bring it on, I thought. There was a show where a lady fired darts at balloons. There were some weird dancing shows, but ping pong shows that had been advertised on the guy's card downstairs were not to be seen. There was an old German couple that showed up late. They seemed very disappointed that they missed a lot of the shows. I could overhear them complaining to each other. I knew what they were saying in a roundabout way, even though I don't speak their language. After a while, sitting in my chair and taking it all in, it was actually quite shocking to see the environment I was in. Not the show, but for example, when we first came up the stairs, there was a lady bouncing a baby on her knee at the entrance of the room. Everyone watching the show seemed to be a bit out of place. The show ended, so we were ready to leave. We'd only ordered one drink each when we arrived, so you can imagine our shock when the bill came to our table and was 9,000 baht. Dave, who is quite a large guy, started freaking out, and the lady who had brought the bill over to us was clearly terrified. We were all standing behind Dave as he is the biggest out of our group. I was very surprised that the guys at the door didn't come over to try and smooth things over. In the end, we did a deal and settled on 3,000 baht. Yes, we had been ripped off, but 3,000 baht was better than 9,000 baht, and the bill was shared between several of us. We all laughed it off as just being unexperienced, but Dave was really angry and he took a long time to calm down. Later on, we found a bar which had a Japanese band playing Beatles covers. That band was pretty good, and I ended up seeing them again at a bar in Singapore. The one bit of advice I would give you if you're in Thailand and you get set up like we did, just try and do a deal and walk away. It's just not worth the hassle. He's absolutely right, of course. Nobody likes to be ripped off, but you know, in this sort of situation, you better kind of do a deal and walk away, and you know, you fight to another day, as it were. But this is classic pat pong rip off, isn't it? When people come here for the first time, they've heard about these ping pong shows and they want to see them. Now, if you don't know what a ping pong show is, I can't really describe it here because it would be too rude for YouTube. But let's just say girls on stage fire at ping pong balls from places that ping pong balls shouldn't be firing out of, okay? I think you'll get my drift from there. So if you've never been here, it is interesting the first time to go and watch that once. You know, they're not sexy, they're just not sexy. You know, it's interesting because it's something completely different that you'll only see in Bangkok. It's kind of phasing out now. It's something that went on in the past. You know, it's what they used to do to attract people into the bars, but you know, Thailand's moved on in a big way now, so you don't see that very much these days. But those bars in Pat Pong 1, the main street with the market, when you get the touts downstairs who they want you to go upstairs and watch these shows, these are classic rip-off bars. Not all of them. I do know many people have gone up, they've watched a show and left, no problems, but a lot of guys do get ripped off in these sort of bars, so be very, very careful. Okay, look, let's jump into our fourth and final story today. I want to start with a short backstory. I began my love of traveling to Asia about 5 years ago when I traveled to China on a few business trips and a few times for vacation. Before I took my first trip, I learned that I would need to set up a WeChat profile to make friends there and be able to keep in touch. On my first trip, I had been recently divorced and was eager to meet some local women. I'm 40 years old now, and if I might be so bold to say, a decent looking guy. When I've approached women in my range, I haven't had too many problems dating in the US. I do want to be married again someday, but haven't considered meeting a wife in Asia up until this point. I just don't have the ability to stay abroad long enough to build that level of a relationship. During a visit to a tea shop, I met a girl and we became very close. She accompanied me on every trip when I came back to her country, and we are still friends. These experiences and your videos helped me a lot on my first trip to Thailand. When back in the States, I would occasionally use the shake function on WeChat, where it will connect two users that are shaking their phones at the same time. This is where I met my first friend in Thailand. Her name is Bun. She was nice to talk to and we would chat often. I later learned that she had some experience in massage parlors when she posted pictures of massage girls and inviting people to come and visit her shop. She may have been like a mama-san or something, who knows. She would also post some cooking pictures from her hometown where she said she owned a little restaurant. Both her as well as a colleague of mine would often encourage me to take a trip to Thailand, and I thought it would be perfect for my 40th birthday. I booked my trip for February of 2022 to Phuket under the Sandbox program. I asked Bun if she would like to come to Phuket, show me around and go on some tourist activities with me. We planned that she would come for 2 nights over the weekend. She agreed and booked her own hotel room. She was supposed to travel back home for work on the 3rd day. On the 25th of February, I arrived and walked around the town and stopped for a Nuru massage. The crazy part was, after dark, I was walking around and drinking along the beach road on the side with the shops, and a very small but much older ladyboy come out of nowhere and grabbed my privates aggressively over my shorts with one hand while taking my wallet with the other hand. Luckily, I'm fairly street smart and I knew something was wrong. As we know, usually the woman will just grab your wrist and pull you in their direction. I tried to continue walking and he/she let go of me. I immediately checked for my wallet and it was gone. She only had time to take a step behind me and I turned and said, "Hey." I knew from watching your videos that making a big scene was not a good idea, and I didn't know what was about to happen. Thankfully, I believe she thought I was drunk as she wouldn't get caught, but as soon as she was busted, she smiled at me, reached in her purse and gave me back my wallet. I smiled back at her with a look like, "You almost got me." I joked to myself thinking, wow, in Thailand even the pickpockets are friendly. After stopping for a few drinks, I went back to rest. The second day, I opened Tinder and started swiping. I didn't rule out paying for companionship, but I thought I'd see if I could match with someone and try a date. Very quickly, I realised that there was an endless number of women on the dating sites that I could date while I was in town. I matched with a woman named Tang. She is an elementary school teacher. After chatting for a few minutes, we planned to have lunch together that same day. We had a nice time in a beach restaurant. She asked me if I was looking for a wife in Thailand, and I said no. Just something casual. I wanted to be honest. After the day, I was unsure on the customs, so I went with my experience. In China, the local girls appreciated when I wasn't aggressive on a first date. Just act friendly, be honest, and have a good time. Then the second day, everything was on the table. Most girls just want to know you're respectful and they can feel safe. After my date with Tang, I said I wanted to see her again and she wanted to see me as well. She said she had to tutor some students online and has her computer with her. If she can come to my hotel, she would work for a while and we could go out again in the evening. I can't remember if we ate dinner, but I guess we did. I remember we went to an Australian bar and played pool and drank. We then went dancing and had a lot more drinks before some aerobics, and she spent the night. I expected Bun the next evening and I felt like I could sleep in and tell Tang goodbye properly. Things rarely go to plan. Before I got my coffee, Bun texted me around 30 minutes earlier and said she was on the bus and wanted to know where I was. I looked back at Tang and thought to myself, this might not end well. I asked Bun, "What bus? Are you going to the airport?" She said, "To the hotel." The airport to Patong is about an hour. That's when I began to panic. She would arrive in about 30 minutes. I told Bun that I wasn't in my room and I was getting breakfast and going shopping. A rare lie on my part, but I was desperate. Thankfully, she wasn't planning to come to my room and she was heading to her hotel. It was about 5 minutes from mine. Since I was up and making coffee, Tang woke up and I told her I needed to go shopping. She was cool, got ready to go. This would be the second time luck saved my trip. I was able to shower and meet Bun later that day. I was planning to only spend 2 days with her and I could go off on my own. Another plan that didn't work out. Bun decides to close her restaurant and planned to stay 5 days and offered to stay longer if I wanted. I was a little upset, but Thailand had been great to me so far, so I put on a smile and tried to enjoy the moment. Since we had met in person for the first time and we were getting along well, I asked her if she would like to cancel her room and stay in my room. She asks, "What do you want?" I told her nothing serious. I wasn't there to find a wife. She agreed and moved into my room. We spent the next few days having fun on some excursions and daily aerobics. Even though she basically hijacked most of my vacation, I had a lot of that girlfriend experience. We all love and I had a great time. The morning before my last day in Thailand, Bun went home and I was able to try and meet someone new. I began to swipe and match with a local girl named Anne. She works as a flight attendant. We planned to meet for lunch. The funny thing was she recommended the same beach restaurant as Tang, so I suggested somewhere else. She was the most beautiful woman I had gone out with so far, but unfortunately she already planned that night and was disappointed that I was leaving in the morning. She was cool and we're still friends. Later that day I matched with another girl and talked about meeting later that evening. After dinner I thought I would wait in a go-go bar while I made plans with a new girl. I don't remember her name. Some guy that worked there came up to me and said, "No phone." I said, "I'm texting my friend," and he said, "No phone." Again I left that place and the bar next door invited me in and I asked them, "Can I text?" They said yes, but no photos. I was unprepared for the mama-san. She was working me hard for a sale and asking what I like. All I said was, "Petite." She introduced me to a girl that she recommended and said she had only just started a few days before and only had 1 or 2 customers. I don't remember exactly what it was. I didn't believe her, but later I was thinking that she did seem kind of new. I paid the bar fine and we left. We went dancing for a while, and the whole time this girl was doing tequila shots. She also asked if I had bar fined her paying the mama-san, to which I said I can't. She was texting the mama-san and trying to negotiate with me using very few words. She only asked like 2 times lower than the price on the second time. I kindly refused, and the mama-san ended up showing up anyway. I guess she was there for moral support and the free drinks. It might also be the fact that I overpaid for the first girl. I'm embarrassed to say, but it was $500 US. I should have negotiated, but it was my last day and I still had travel money to spend. The new girl spoke very little English and we just drank and danced. The mama-san gave me some encouragement and she left. After some time, the mama-san left and we went to my place for the night. Another sign she might have been new was she couldn't hold her drink. She threw up several times in the bathroom. I was a good guy. I held her hair out of the way and got her some water. She just kept saying, "You take care of me, I take care of you," in the cutest voice, and we went to sleep after some aerobics. All in all, I had a good time and I left in the morning. I can't wait to go back, and I've already booked my next trip. So there you go. Nothing to talk about that story. Cut and dry, as I say. Guys, thanks for listening to the stories again. I'll be back next week with some more stories. Until then, take care and you have a good week.